Step 1, find a sugar daddy. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to my channel. If you don't know me, my name's Maddie, and I want this video to primarily be about traveling and the whole aspect around wanting to travel cheap or travel on a budget. And so I've shared a lot of things like on my Instagram story about different prices that I've spent on like different trips. Like, for example, I spent like $120 for 3 days in New York City, and people were like absolutely like dumbfounded by this idea. And so that's when I like kind of got started with this whole thing, like, oh, you know, maybe people do want to know about this, kind of help people out and help people get to experience the things that I've experienced. And I'm so lucky and I'm so grateful I've gotten to go on these trips and do these things that I love to do. And so I guess I'm just hoping that I can help some more people kind of live out their dreams and maybe be able to experience some really cool things that they wouldn't have been able to before. So without further ado, let's get to the video. All right, first thing is first, do your research. And by this, I don't mean go out and look up, you know, how to travel for free, how to do all this stuff, because that's super unpractical and you will probably never be able to do it unless you have hundreds of thousands of followers on whatever social media. And so when I say do your research, I mean look up the places you want to go and see if it is friendly for Americans to go to, first of all, because sometimes countries aren't. And second of all, look at their exchange rate. The exchange rate is absolutely so important to this, because if the American dollar is high at the time, you know, if you're from the US and then you go over to this country, then you'll be able to do a lot more things for a lot less money. And so that's how we were able to do a lot of things in Thailand and Bali, because their exchange rate was insane. Like, we would get these beautiful, I'll put a few pictures up, these beautiful meals and like fruit bowls and stuff like this for like $2 every single day. And so that is like a huge way to be able to go and travel, is being able to afford the places you're going to. Also, look up places that may not be as touristy. So Bangkok, Thailand is just a very busy city. It's huge. Like, I guess you could say there were tourists there, but we were there in the off season. And so by researching, that's how we found out it was off season, which means that the prices were cheaper than normal. So it was getting pretty close to monsoon season, but it only rained like one day when we were there for 2 weeks. So that actually turned out really awesome. But by it being off season, we were able to get some of our places cheaper than you normally would. And we were also able to get our flights cheaper than we would. So that is something that is super, super important if you are looking to go somewhere, is to try to find the off season date that you can go. Because like I said, it's so important. Like, you can't even compare sometimes. Like, the on-season pricing to off-season pricing, it's just absolutely insane. And so that is like another really good tip that you can do through researching, that you can find through that. All right, the second thing that you need to do is book your flight. So flights typically are the most expensive thing that you will spend money on for your entire trip. And what I use is Google Flights, and I also use Skyscanner. So they're both pretty good for different things. So Google Flights is good to find good days to go. So say you wanted to go on a trip in January and you're pretty open the whole month, then you can look up the entire month and it'll tell you just like every single day what the price of the flight would be. And so that is super helpful to find the cheapest day to fly out. Google Flights doesn't typically have the cheapest flights, but they can show you what days the cheaper or what day is more expensive. And then after I find that, I go to Skyscanner and I type in the dates or whatever I need to do and the place I want to go, place I want to leave from, and look it up. Skyscanner can be a little sketchy sometimes though, because sometimes they make you book flights through like third-party vendors that like you've never heard of before. And so I would suggest looking at the price of the flight. You'll be like, oh my gosh, this is so cheap. But then look at what website you are buying it from, because some of them can be kind of sketchy and you don't want to pay all this money and then be scammed out of it. So I would recommend, after you see the price, try going to Expedia or Priceline or the airline's actual website, and sometimes you can still find them. It might be a little bit more expensive, but it's definitely safer to go that route and to do those extra steps, because you don't want to get scammed out, because this is definitely the most expensive part of your trip and you want to make sure everything is going pretty smoothly with that. And so to add on to that, sometimes your closest airport is not the cheapest. If I flew to Thailand from our closest airport, our tickets probably would have been about $1,000 or maybe a little bit more. But if I drove to Chicago, which is 4 hours away, I could get them for $600. And so sometimes you have to weigh it out. Like sometimes if it's like $100 difference, just pay the extra $100 for it. You know, it's very convenient. You can, you know, you're a lot closer to home. You don't have that big trek after your trip. And so definitely weigh out your odds with that. But $400 was a huge difference, especially for college kids. And so we took a Greyhound bus for like $30 a piece, I think, to Chicago for our flight. All right. The second most expensive part of your trip is going to be where you stay. So I always use Airbnb. It's the absolute cheapest there is. Either Airbnb or hostels. And I've never actually stayed in a hostel, so I can't really comment on that, how the experience is, but I know a lot of people who have stayed in them and they like them a lot, but I usually travel like with my boyfriend, and so it's definitely a good experience if you want to meet new people. But if you know, you just kind of want your own place, Airbnb is definitely an awesome choice, because it literally is the same price as a hostel and you get your entire apartment or condo or something to yourself. And so, for example, we just booked our place for Rome, and we have 5 of us. And so the more people you have with you, especially starting out, it may not be ideal to have a lot of people go with you, but the more people you have, the cheaper it will be. So our place was like 60 or 70 something a night for our place in Rome, and it ended up being, for 6 nights, it was like, I want to say like $440 to $460. It was something in that range, and we each only paid $85 for the entire week to stay in Rome. And so that is something that's a huge advantage. I mean, $85, people pay like twice that a night to stay usually, and we're paying that for the entire week. And so that is something that is super important to try to really research, look around for different places, because you will find something that's in your price point. And I mean, we did. It's an awesome loft, like it's in the middle of Rome. I think it's going to be so awesome. But I will put up a few pictures of some of the places we stayed in Thailand and Bali, because I think that's a perfect example of what Airbnbs can give you, because we stayed in some of the most beautiful places I've ever seen in my life for $10 to $20 a night, and then that was split between 2 people. And so I think it's so worth it to look into Airbnb. Sometimes you can find stuff on VRBO, which is Vacation Rentals by Owner. Those typically are more expensive, and they sometimes add like weird taxes and stuff onto it. So I would definitely try going with Airbnb first. And if you already have Airbnb and then whoever you're traveling with doesn't, you can send them a link to Airbnb to like join Airbnb, and they will give the person who just joined $40 off their first trip, and they will give you like $30 off your next trip, or it's like $30 off of an experience or something through Airbnb. And that is super helpful because sometimes if you're only staying for a few days, or even if it's like a really cheap place you're staying, $40 can actually cut a lot off of it. And so I would definitely recommend doing that because it's just awesome. Like, I love Airbnb and I have... Alright, so the fourth most expensive thing that you'll probably run into is things to do. So I've heard people say that they love city tours, and they love like going out and exploring the city with like a tour guide to be able to see what the city's all about. They give you, your little secret gems or whatever. But I personally love just exploring the city by myself. Not by myself, with the people I'm with. Because you can just, the best way to do this would to rent like a motorbike or a scooter or something and just go explore. You obviously need to look up a little bit where the bad parts of a city or an area might be, because if you're in a foreign country or if you're in the States, you don't want to go into a bad area when you don't know where you're going. And so drive to them, you get to go experience them, but you also get to see how people actually live in these places. And I think that's so important because you're not just going to these places to go, you're going to experience it. And I think really experiencing a place is experiencing how the people live and experience the food and the culture and all these other things. Like, that's why it's awesome to be able to go, rent a scooter or take a taxi or take the subway, go do something and just explore yourself. That's so cheap to do. It hardly costs any money to rent a scooter. You can walk everywhere for free. You can't get any cheaper than that. And so I think that's something that's super important. And of course, being on budget, don't be afraid to splurge a little bit on the activities you do, because they can totally make or break your experience. And I would say splurge on at least one thing while you're there. And then the rest of the time, walk around, go experience the city, go experience wherever you are for cheap. And it's so easy to do. All right, everybody, so those are my tips. If you like this video, give it a big thumbs up, and also hit the subscribe button if you want to see more of my videos. And I hope this helps you out a lot. And then if one of my tips from this video helps you, please comment below. Please reach out to me on any of my social media, because I want to know. I want to know if I helped you book a cheap flight or helped you go to this awesome city that you've always wanted to go to, but you just couldn't get the courage to do it or couldn't save up the money to do it. And so please, 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 if something of this helped you, please let me know, because I would love to talk to you about it and I would love to help you more if I can. So thank you for watching, and I will see you soon.